Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome to my channel. My name is George Kingori. I'm your online finance guy who speaks about all things finance, how you can be able to grow, how you can be able to invest, and how you can better your financial affairs. And today I'm going to speak about ghetto tax or poor man's tax and how poor people actually pay more in expenses and taxes. Yes, poor people pay more. Without knowing it, they actually pay more. So how do they actually pay more? The rent that they pay in comparison with the value that they receive is much poorer. When the landlords are making upwards of 15% per annum, which is the higher of the various classes of rental properties, it means that the person who is renting this property, this is the person who is living in this low income house, is actually receiving much more value than they are actually paying, because the owner has invested much less, but they are paying a much more rate compared to the value that they receive. So they are paying more compared to their rich counterparts. So paying more for the value that they receive, which is going down. Then the other thing is, the people who live in these poor neighborhoods buy things in small sachets because they cannot be able to afford big amounts if it's in flour or in oil or in all these other big economical purchases. And because they buy in small sachets that they can be able to use per day, then they are actually, when you equate that big chunk of say flour or oil, then you equate it down to the say 50 grams of margarine or 50 grams of oil, the value that they pay is actually more. You would find if you were to divide the 1 liter of oil down to 50 ml of oil, then you would find that they are paying much more than this big amount of money for it to be divided into these small sachets. So they pay more. Maybe it is because of packaging and maybe because of logistics, but when you take these sachets and you buy as many to be able to fill this 1 liter bottle of oil, you might find that this person is actually paying a lot more. And that is one of the expenses that they actually pay more. Of course, the other thing is to do with where they shop. Because in the poor neighborhoods, there may not be shops that are available for these poor people to be able to buy. They are dependent on the local kiosks. They are dependent on the local kiosks and shops, which are much more expensive than the big supermarkets that are not available in their local area. And this makes them buy these things at a premium, because remember, this person is selling much fewer items in that kiosk, in that small neighborhood shop, and so would require to get a little bit more in margins than the supermarket, since the supermarket is selling a lot more things, and so is making little but over a big variety of items. But this small shop is making has to charge a little bit more because it is selling much less to be able to break even and make a profit. So they are paying more because of also the shops and the available outlets where these poor people buy. So this is again ghetto tax, where they are paying more because of poverty. Of course, the other thing is they pay much more in healthcare costs compared to their income. Yes, the people who live in the poor neighborhoods pay much more in healthcare costs compared to their richer counterparts. This is because there are certain expenses for hospitals that cannot go down further. So if the cost of a needle is say 20 shillings, this needle will still be 20 shillings whether it is used in this rich hospital or in this poor hospital. And because these people are earning a lot less, they pay much more as a percentage of their income compared to their richer counterparts. So they pay much more in healthcare. If you are to put it further, because they live in these poor neighborhoods, sanitation might not actually be good. And because sanitation is actually worse, they actually suffer more from the sanitary diseases such as such as cholera, such as dysentery, such as typhoid, that come out of living in neighborhoods that are less clean and sanitary. And because of this, they pay much more because of the disease that they face living in these poor neighborhoods. Again, I say, because these rich people are not exposed to this, they go to the hospitals much less because of sanitation related diseases. So these people in the poor neighborhoods pay much more in healthcare costs. Then of course the other thing would be in some slum areas there are food deserts. Yes, the variety of food that is available to poor people is actually low. You might find certain types of vegetables are considered, say, a premium and may not be available in these poor neighborhoods, because the assumption is they might not be willing to buy at a premium this other variety of vegetables. And so you might find that most poor neighborhoods are actually food deserts. You might not find certain varieties of food, certain varieties of vegetables, because the assumption is, why bring if they cannot afford? And because of this, the people in the neighborhoods may not be able to have a good diet allocation, because the type of food that is coming in these poor neighborhoods is actually low. And for them to get this food, they might actually need to travel and go further to be able to get this food, making it a premium to be able to acquire this food and make it available to the poor community. So they pay much more for the food that they have to transport again to the places where they live. So the premiums are again higher. Of course, the other thing is related to theft and robbery. When people are robbed and when people are stolen from, they need to replace these things. They need to acquire more security and do other things related to their safety and security because of theft and robbery and also crime. And because of this, they have to incur additional expenses that are related to replacement of stolen items and their own security. Because of this, they are paying more per household than the rich people who do not have to replace sofa sets and TVs that are not stolen ever so often. Actually, the major crime in the richer areas would be something like carjacking, as opposed to the poor neighborhoods where the actual household items are stolen. So they pay much more because of theft and robbery and all these things. Of course, the other thing would be the poor infrastructure in poor neighborhoods makes it a lot more expensive for the people who are transporting, or the public buses and the public matatus and the public transportation to be able to get to these poor neighborhoods. These cars break down often because the roads are poor and they are not maintained as often. In fact, they're not given priority. When it comes to repairing of roads, the poor neighborhoods are not given priority. And because of this and the constant breakdowns, it makes it expensive and slow in terms of fuel and replacement of things that break down in these cars. And this cost is again brought down to the poor individuals who live in these communities. And this makes them pay a premium just for public transport. So because of this, they actually pay more than the folks from the richer neighborhoods. Of course, the other thing would be poor people are not able to evade taxes or avoid taxes. Or let me use a better word, avoid taxes. They're not able to avoid taxes because they're more concerned about things that are more relevant towards their existence. Because remember, if you are constantly thinking about what you will eat, how you will drink, how you will pay your children's school fees, you are less you're going to have less time to be able to think about how to avoid certain classes of taxes. And that is why rich people avoid taxes when poor people are not in a capacity or in a position to do so. Again, they cannot be able to pay consultants to be able to help them structure their financial affairs, because again, this additional cost is prohibitive to them, and so it becomes a preserve of the rich to be able to avoid taxes. And because of this, they pay much more taxes as a percentage of their income compared to rich individuals. And that is how poor people pay much more. The other thing, of course, is in social contributions. Because poor people do not have all the money, because poor people cannot be able to meet all their needs, then they are dependent on their social setup, on the people who are around them, on friends and family who again may be also lacking in resources. And because of this, there might be much more social contributions towards meeting things like emergency health care, medical expenses, children going off to university and things like that. And because of this, there are much more social contributions to help likewise people to be able to meet certain needs and move and be able to do certain things. And because of this, the poor people pay much more in social contributions as a comparison to their income, and so they pay much more. And so that is how poor people actually pay more for taxes and for their expenses compared to the rich people as a percentage of their income. So if you thought that poor people are incapable, if you thought that poor people are actually lazy, no, it is because they pay much more for what everyone needs in their lives. I hope that I'm shining light, and you are learning, and you are growing, and you're becoming better in your financial affairs. Thank you, and enjoy your